But so starting with our usual tapping exercise. Warm your hand up and together, tapping over your face. While you're doing this, just sit up in your chair and have your feet down. On. And up over your head. Keep a nice steady rhythm. Down from one shoulder. Other side. Excuse me. Part of your chest. Belly. And then relax. A good little sort of set of movements to become familiar with the tapping exercises. And something you can use for in all sorts of different circumstances, all sorts of different ways. Good for just getting yourself warmed up a little bit in this chilly weather. Straighten the chair up. But now just sit back, having woken yourself up. Don't sort of fall asleep if you can avoid it. But rather just get that sense of allowing your thoughts to quieten, allowing your body to settle. Just noticing your breathing. So the sort of feeling that you want to be left with is a very clear one in mind and body. One of my early teachers used to describe the standing posture, but it works just as well for the seated posture, as though you're on top of a hill looking out over a valley. So if you bring your feet in now and just again settle in, let your weight come forwards. Look for that lengthening upwards, not pushing yourself up, not straining to hold yourself up, but rather let your hips sink down, put your chin in, feel the back of your head lifting. And it's a very subtle feeling of just opening up. And you had just climbed up a hill, and you're looking out over a valley. Chances are for a few moments, you're just going to get that sense of arrival, and you're here and you're taking in the whole vista, the whole view, without necessarily focusing on any one thing, not thinking about it necessarily, just that sort of brief experience. Maybe the breeze on your face, all of those kind of things. These are the sort of things that we're actually looking to do. So just settle in with that feeling. And then just slowly begin to turn your head. Keep doing that. I've got a message on to you. So we begin to focus in on details. What's happening in our spine, our shoulders. But as you do that, try and keep up a sense, a memory of that initial open feeling, clear feeling. You don't want to get so bogged down in details that you lose that. And then hands in front of your shoulders. And then going forwards. One of the things that is sometimes said about our sight is that most people have, in a way, two aspects to their sight. When you look at something, you're looking through what is referred to as the central vision, but you're also aware out of the corner of your eye of things happening around that, your peripheral vision. And the kind of awareness that I'm talking about, of focusing on one thing but aware of what's behind that, is actually very similar to that. Now, hands out to your sides and curving around. Nice smooth feeling in your arms, your shoulders. See if you can just feel the rotation in your shoulder joint. And then winding around. And back the other way. Rest your hands. And then easing forwards and push back. So that sort of dual awareness, and not just a kind of mental awareness, but also what's going on in your body, the physical quality of being upright compared to the feeling when you go forwards, for instance. That upright feeling should somehow be still present. And we start to develop these things in very familiar movements. So for instance, with this one, when you go forwards, although you're angling, and so that's going to change things in the front of the body, in your legs and so on and so forth, but that long feeling in your back, described as your head floating up, remains. So that here, the pull at the top of the head is straight up, but when you go forwards, it's still there, but it's just out at an angle. Turn slightly. So this becomes a sort of intuitive quality, one that we're familiar with on the same kind of level as we might be familiar with the shoes on our feet, or just the layout of our house or garden or something like that. And it comes through repetition. And then turn in the other direction. And around. and back the other way. And back to the center. Pull one knee up to raise the heel, push out, step, and just gently press it. Pull back. It's basically a raising and then an expansion and contraction from your hip to your foot. And then on the other side. So don't make it too short because you do want the leg to expand out, but not too long. You don't want your knee to be completely locked. Good. Give yourself a moment to settle in again. Particularly after the step in, you've probably lost some of the posture. And then let your hands drop down beside you, and your hands are just going to follow the curve around. This time, as you move the weight forwards, so combining movements from your upper and your lower body into one whole unit, shall we call it? One whole action. Another element we can bring in, if it suits you, is breathing. As I've said many times, the breathing patterns are ideas, guidelines, rather than sort of instructions chiseled in stone. But when we go back and the hands open like this, make sure your hands aren't coming too far behind your hips, only just very slightly. And that will help to open that top part of the chest, and indeed further down into the belly. So that encourages the in-breath. So it tends to be an out-breath as we go forwards. But as always, if you do find that your body is responding differently, then follow that response. Don't force the breathing. Now this time, change to Ushaman Castanet. With this one, if you are following the breathing, what you'll get is here a sort of filling up in the body, and then breathing out, almost as though you're breathing out through your arms. And then rolling the ball. So imagine the ball between your arms and your body, coming back carefully. And then going back, pigeon spreads its wings. Although your arms go out, they don't actually go behind your shoulders, behind the ribs. So we keep that nice open feeling here. One more time. And then pushing away. Nice and smooth, nice and fluid. This time changing, punch with both fists. A loose fist, remember, hollow fist. And then back to pigeon spreads its wings. And his last three in a little sequence. So if you are keen on the breath, then your breath changes when the movement changes. So it'll be in breath and then out breath. And then as you start to wrap your fingers around and sit back, you begin the next in breath and the out breath. And then as you open your fingers, start to sit back again, in breath again, and so on. So there's differing views though in Tai Chi. I've had one teacher say to me that they felt that the breathing in a sequence of movements was absolutely vital. He's very insistent, Chinese teacher, get it right, get it exactly right. And yet another very experienced Chinese teacher says, no, just breathe naturally. The breathing will come, get your posture right, get the movement right, the breathing will just happen, that's fine. So just take your pick about where you feel comfortable in that wide spectrum of possibilities with breathing. One more round. This time open your hands winding back, almost a reverse of the first movement that we did. This time, your hands come down and you come back and just feel your hands being drawn around the curve again. This time, so that they come in just in front of your hips. It's not quite such a big movement as the first time we did this. So last time, bringing your hands in and change into the vertical movement, a gentle push down through the feet and hips, and that nice, smooth sort of almost tingling up and down your spine as your body expands and contracts up and down. And that expansion gradually pushing out sideways and forward and backwards from the center of the body. One more time. Okay. Hands out to your sides. Walkers. And parting the clouds. It felt a little bit like this morning when I looked out the window and realized that at last the fog had cleared and the sun was shining. I always think that the name Parting the Clouds is a very evocative one. Okay, and then changing. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. I think, truth to tell, all of the movements that involve some kind of expansion, which in the end is all of them, have that same quality of opening that I was talking about in Parting the Clouds. I suppose the name, as much as anything else, really encourages that. make sure you don't strain in your arm and that you don't lock your arm out. When I look here, this is very kind of loose here. Look for that way of doing these movements that is different to how we habitually move. A few years ago, I managed to pull a muscle in my shoulder somehow or another, and it wasn't serious by any means. It wasn't sort of, but it really hurt. It was one of those injuries where every time I rolled over in bed, there was this sharp pain and so on and so forth. I remember getting up in the morning thinking, how am I supposed to go and teach Tai Chi if I can't even lift my arm up without it being so painful that I'm wincing? But I went outside and I did my warm-ups and everything, and then I had to go at this exercise, and I found that if I really focused on those internal movements that I've talked about so many times, and it's very much an awareness thing, of course. If I worked with those to build the movement up, I could do the movement without it registering any kind of pain. It just felt really nice and smooth. And this is very important in Tai Chi, that we're looking to find different ways of moving, to lose old habits of movement. That's not an easy thing to do. One more time on each side. I'm not suggesting that you try and analyze those old habits, recognize them, but put your time into developing the positive habits. Eventually they'll replace the less useful ones. Now, change it. So a part of what builds up what we call habits is just the pathways that become what they call hardwired in the nervous system. If we habitually chew our fingernails, then the nervous impulses that lead us to take our hand to our mouth will be much more familiar to us than something that we haven't done very much. So the way to overcome old habits isn't to concentrate on them, but to really practice building new habits. Much more positive that way anyway. And it's very true for the way that we move, stand and sit in Tai Chi. This time, add in the turn. Regular practice reinforces that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a long time of practicing. One more round. And then scooping the sea and looking at the sky. and grasping the tiger's ears. Switch sides. And change. One more time. Good. So remember that your brain and your nervous system are not the kind of fixed thing that they used to be thought of. We now know that the brain and the nervous system are what's referred to as plastic. It can change. There were tests done on London taxi drivers, and they measured the size of a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which stores information. London taxi drivers have to remember a lot of roads and things like that, and their hippocampus on average is bigger than it is for most of us. If they stop driving their taxi and go and do a different job, the hippocampus shrinks. The saying that neuroscientists have is that nerve cells that fire together wire together. In other words, if you use a particular pathway through the nervous system and the brain frequently enough, it becomes more, I suppose, sort of connected and becomes easier to use. It's like if you have a shed in your garden and you walk there every day, it tends to keep the path a bit clearer than if you haven't been there for 6 months or something like that. So although it's useful to identify areas that you want to kind of work on and so on and so forth, if that's all you do, then really there's a danger that what you're doing is reinforcing neural pathways within the nervous system that are actually created by the bad habits, and you're reinforcing those bad habits. I think we can go far too far with that. I think there's a tendency to do that. I think it's much better to look at the positive thing, think positively about, oh yes, yeah, not I'm having trouble dropping my hips, or my shoulders doing this, or my arms are doing that, but look how far my hips have sunk. You know, because remember the nervous system is stimulated by a thought or a memory or some kind of image, even as it is by some kind of physical stimulus. So these things are constantly changing for us. And if you have any doubt about that, neuroplasticity, as it's referred to, was a discovery made working with people who are stroke survivors. In some circumstances, somebody's had a stroke that has, say, affected their arm, and they can't move the arm very well. With the right kind of treatment, with the right kind of exercise, like Tai Chi, they can get some of that movement back. It's not a given, but it does happen. It's well documented now. And we're sometimes told that old dogs can't learn new tricks. But most people who have strokes are over 50. which means that most of the people who were involved in this discovery of neuroplasticity are older people, people who we would have thought everything's fixed. And it's not. It simply isn't true. It's something that used to be thought, and it's an idea that we've inherited. It's an idea we have to let go of, because we can always change things, it seems. A lot of it is down to your own kind of willpower, I guess. So going back to rocking forwards and backwards, a really good example of this is, how do we go from this position, the forward position, to the upright position? And the normal way, the usual way of doing it, so the habit that has been hardwired into our nervous system, is to stiffen slightly in our back, our shoulders, our neck, somewhere around there, and kind of pull ourselves up. But when you do this, don't do that. Use your legs, push your feet down. If you want to, you could just raise your heels as you go forwards, and that makes that a bit stronger. So there's a push from your feet that pushes your shoulders back. And also a pull from your hips. And if you focus on those, then eventually you'll find other things going on in your body as well. And the old habit, the pathway will become unused. It will still be there, and you'll still slip into it, but you're less likely to use it because you're more familiar with this pathway. Now turn that into the circular movement. So another pathway that we want to hardwire, another part of the body we really want to feel in use, is that middle part of the body, the area between hips and waist. So again, feel what's happening. How are you moving your shoulders and your head around? Have you reverted to that old habit, that old pathway, which is simply moving from the upper part of your body? Can you remind yourself to move from your center? And then stirring the beams. Letting your arms follow the movement. Again, a common habit would be the thought, the question, what do my arms do? How have I got to do this with my arms? And you want to hardwire the correct response, which is your arms and your hands follow your shoulders follow what's happening in the lower part of your body, your weight, your hips, your waist. And then you'll maybe again notice other movements higher up your body that are kind of revealed when we start to walk that different path. It's quite difficult to maintain those new habits. Our minds wander. We start to wonder what we're going to have for lunch, or we get distracted because, oh, it's so annoying, isn't it? That hip is not sinking again. And so quite without realizing it, we start to wander down the more familiar paths. But we recognize that after a while. We start to lose some of that background feeling, that sense of being on the hill, looking out over the valley. We're back in the thicket again. And then all we need to do is very gently switch the focus of our attention back to that much more pleasant feeling in the body. quite a discipline to maintain that focus. And it's helped if you just remember how nice it is. It's not a task or homework or anything like that. We do it because it's nice. And we feel better when we do this. And then just rest. So we begin to see how what we refer to as meditation, the aspect of the art that is really about training the mind, if you like to think of it like that, is in no way separate from the actual physical movements. The nervous system is in a way an interface between what we habitually think of as mind and what we habitually think of as body. Not just the nervous system either, there's other functions, but I'm just thinking, just to keep it fairly simple. So, this isn't either or. And I think increasingly we find in Tai Chi as we develop that any advance is associated with some kind of change in our mind in one way or another. So just rubbing your hands together and then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. The side. Half of the chest. Belly. And then stand. So again, try and be positive about your practice rather than thinking, oh, I've got to go and do this. It should be something that we enjoy, that we feel that we benefit from. And look at what you can do. I remember some years ago pointing out to a group that if they'd gone to their doctor, sort of like, they've been with me for some time, sort of like 5 years before, and said, when I walk along and I walk very slowly, I wobble around a lot and I'm like this. And the doctor would probably say, they're all older people. The doctor would probably say, oh, that's just normal. That's just, that's normal for your age. Don't worry about it. Use a stick or something like that. But in fact, if 5 years later, after practicing, they've gone around, they would have felt it much better. And we need to be careful not to just focus on what we can't do. I've been doing Tai Chi since 1983. The expanse of stuff that I can't do seems to grow every day. And if that's what you're going to focus on, it's going to get very depressing. And the effect of your practice is going to be depressive. You need to be able to enjoy these things. It's why I like an image like standing on the hill, looking out over a valley. It has this lovely open, almost optimistic quality to it, I think. So that's what we're looking for. And enough of the technical details. You don't really need me to kind of keep banging on about them. Sometimes it's useful to look at that, but it changes anyway. weight slightly forwards, hips dropping back, a sense of just settling down nicely. And then sinking down and pushing up. Just feeling that pulse in your body, contracting, expanding, contracting, expanding. And again, this may work with your breathing as well. So expanding and be aware of that gentle flow of movement. Your legs right up through your back, into your shoulders. Change. Don't struggle to go down. Just allow yourself to be drawn down. If you go and have lunch and you go and sit in the chair, you don't sit in the chair and think, man, my hips aren't sinking. You just let yourself drop. So have some confidence in your legs and in your awareness of the whole structure, the whole posture that you're looking for, that it will hold you in the same way as the chair does. And then parting the clouds, again, this lovely expansive feeling. One more time. Good, down 1 foot forwards. There's this idea in Tai Chi about holding postures, which I think is, I think in and of itself, it's quite a difficult. I've got to hold the posture. It's quite a lot of, it's quite a heavy thought, really, isn't it? And I think we should be cultivating these postures. And sometimes when you cultivate something, that means just staying there for a while. And it's particularly important here on the back leg and then again on the front leg, just to give yourself that time to cultivate, to feel that support coming from the leg, to remind yourself that that's possible. We can reinforce tension in the body if we focus on it too much. Having trouble feeling that your knees tight, your hips are tight, your back is tight, focus your attention on your foot. So that your thoughts, if you like, think of it like that, your awareness moves through that area. It doesn't get stuck in that area. This is again why understanding how we can direct our attention is so very, very important. Because we will naturally tend to let our thoughts and our attention accumulate around those very areas that we're trying to get movement into. If your awareness isn't moving, there's not going to be any movement there. And then just raising your toes and your hips. and stepping in. And on the other side. And raising your toes and your heel. And stepping in. And then first foot forwards. And then this time you're going to change to fisherman castanet. Change over. And then change. And go back to your chairs now. So the other sentence in that phrase that I used, nerve cells that fire together, wire together, was that you lose it, you use it or lose it. In other words, if you don't use those particular useful pathways, then you will lose it. That can also be a bit depressing, can't it? But actually, you could turn that around. If I cultivate the habit of bringing myself upright, not by straining, but by using my legs, sinking my hips, so on and so forth, all of those things, then not only am I developing this new pathway, this new habit, but because I'm not using the old habit, I'm more likely to lose it. So I think use it or lose it actually has a really kind of positive element to it. So now just coming back to sitting and embrace tiger, return to mountain. That last movement downwards, maybe with an out breath if you're doing this with a breathing pattern, again has that sense of just a clearing out in your body and your mind, almost like, you know, if you took a shower, you feel the water draining down over your skin. It's almost like that kind of feeling inside. Once again, leaving you with this sense of, you know, being on the hill, looking out over the valley. One more time. And rest. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. As always, if you have any questions, do feel free to ask or to email me.